everybody. How's it going? It looks like I'm connected, but it's doing that thing it did last time, where the little stats page is not showing me things, but I think I'm on. I think we're good. Let me know if you're here, if you can hear me. Should be in the right place. So I hope, hello, War Dove. Okay, good. Someone is here. Awesome. I'm still getting the hang of how OBS works with streaming and all that stuff. And sometimes I pull up the stream thing from YouTube itself, but that kind of makes things a little bit slow on my computer, so I didn't want to do that. Awesome. I feel like the place we're in Yuwu right now is very similar to where we were just at with Brittany's streams of Arha, where a bunch of chaos just happened, and it was a little bit unexpected chaos. So I am really excited to see where it goes from here. I guess I'm gonna go ahead and get started. The chapter title we're on is very interesting too. We're on page 263 for chapter 24, which is called Flower Pluckers Are Human Too. So that's a fun title. Murong Lian raced to the palace, but the emperor met this revelation with an attitude of pure nonchalance. As he teased the two golden beasts by the brazier, listening to them sing his praises in alternating duets of His Imperial Majesty is handsome and carefree, and His Imperial Majesty is gloriously majestic, he reassured Murong Lian with a few careless platitudes, then told him to focus on cracking the case instead of worrying over other matters. The Imperial Palace is closely guarded. Even if Gumong did collude with that cook, what could he do? Pull down the sky? Your Imperial Majesty must remain vigilant, Murong Lian said anxiously. In the end, this incident is the result of this subject's neglect. If your Imperial Majesty were to come to harm... The Emperor stopped fiddling with his golden incense chopsticks and put them down. Enough. You think we don't know you? Gumong escaped from your pavilion. You're only so anxious because you're afraid we'll be angry and hold you responsible. He shot a glance at Murong Lian with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Oh, Lian, you're our brother by blood. Be at ease. Would we punish you for something like this? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he definitely would. Once the Emperor ascended the throne, according to custom, he was to address his siblings and cousins by their official titles. However, in private, he still sometimes called Murong Lian Lian when he needed to reassure him the closeness of familial bonds had to be emphasized. As for Gumong, if you still feel uneasy, we'll send him to the prison. It would be a trial for him to escape that, even if he grew wings. That's not foreshadowing, is it? He's not about to just grow wings all of a sudden. With great effort, Murong Lian calmed himself and acquiesced. Your Imperial Majesty, might this subject receive permission to perform an interrogation, should the case require it? Go ahead. Why wouldn't you be allowed to interrogate someone? Then this subject's use of torture. The Emperor glanced at him, smiling, then snorted. They say it's Shi He the ruthless and Wang Shu the cruel. We see that this is true indeed. Is it that you can't get people to tell the truth without torture? Murong Lian cleared his throat. Gumong is a special case, of course. Enough. Interrogate him however you like, but don't overdo it. We think Shiha-jun retained some kind of obsession with him. We found it amusing the first time you two bickered in the hall, but will be annoyed by a second round. I keep forgetting that the Emperor is using the royal we, and I'm like, who is the second person? The Emperor played with the jade beads in his hand and continued lightly. Keep yourself under control. Don't let us hear a formal indictment against you. He rolled his eyes. One of you is an important military official, and the other an imperial scion. Yet for the sake of your personal grudges, you act like 3-year-olds squabbling over a toy. Do you really think we can't tell? Mu Ronglian found himself unable to reply. The rising sun emerged in the east. As the light of day pierced the darkness, the citizens awakened and rose from their beds, chattering and gossiping. Blue, I'm sorry work got in the way. I'm glad you didn't miss more, too. War Dove, yeah, the Emperor is just unsettling. But then again, I usually find the Emperor characters unsettling. Like, are there good Emperors? Really? News of the murders in the Mansion of Beauties the previous night was immediately leaked and swiftly spread across the imperial capital until it became the hottest topic of conversation for all the capital's citizens. Somehow everyone, from the old and gray to children and youths, had a pithy comment to share. Almost everyone in the brothel was killed overnight. How tragic. Ayah, good heavens. Has the killer been caught? He's long since escaped. Before escaping, he even left a writing on the walls. Gold and treasure are a plentiful sight, but rare are the men who can last all night. The version I heard was, this humble one is lonely, sincerely seeking wives. Who can say? In any case, the Mansion of Beauties is all sealed up now. No one can go in other than the officials investigating the case. But in my opinion, no matter if it was gold and treasure are a plentiful sight or this humble one is lonely, it sounds like a case of seizing women rather than riches. Could it be a flower-plucking rapist with the penchant for murder? Well, that's where the chapter title comes in, I guess. The more the story spread, the more ludicrous it became, and in the end, a certain storyteller came up with this tale. There was so much unclean chi at the Mansion of Beauties that it attracted a lecherous, vengeful ghost. On a dark and moonless night, he stole into the mansion, and killed the men before defiling them, then defiled the women before killing them. Oh, okay. That vengeful ghost was unnaturally virile. Virile? Yet another word I don't know how you say. I've only read it. Virile, I guess. He defiled and killed more than 70 people in the Mansion of Beauties before the sun rose, and so indiscriminately that he even claimed elderly official Yuwu. The tea-drinking customers were wide-eyed and speechless. Isn't that kind of insane? One of the customers couldn't hold back and burst into raucous laughter. Young Yue Gongzi? What's brought this on? Ha 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 ha. The one who had doubled over with laughter was Yue Chunqing, who was so idle that he had nothing better to do than collect rumors. He chuckled. I've heard so many versions, but yours is definitely the funniest. Defiling and killing more than 70 people in one night? Bro, I'm afraid that rapist isn't virile. He's a two-pump chump. This shattered the atmosphere of terror. Everyone laughed and shook their heads. Even the maidens covered their mouths and giggled in secret. The storyteller was terribly embarrassed, but when he realized his heckler was the young master of the Yue clan, he couldn't exactly chase him away in a huff. He could only smile along and say, yes, Yue Gongzi is right. And so the tale of virile rapist mounts 70 in one night was revised by the singular Yue Chunqing into two pump flower plucker kills brothel goers in furious rampage. Probably the only people in the city who weren't in the mood to listen to this chatter were the friends and families of the murdered clients, the harried imperial guards, everyone at Shenong Terrace, and the two noble masters Shihe and Wang Shu. Within Wang Shu Manor, an attendant spoke with their head lowered. "My lord, the servant you wanted from Luomei Pavilion is here." Murong Lian had just smoked 2 pipes worth of ephemera. He was in a good mood indeed. "All right, let him in." The servants hurriedly entered the hall, kneeling in front of Murong Lian to give his report. "This slave greets Wangshu Shenjun. May he receive 10,000 blessings." Enough. Save your breath. You shared a room with that escaped cook, correct?" "Yes." "Come, tell me about him. What kind of person is he?" He was brought to Luomei Pavilion 5 years ago," the servant replied. "Doesn't like to talk much. Bit of a creep. Often alone." "Did anything happen that might have made him develop a grudge against brothel girls?" Murong Lian asked. "Nothing like that. Not exactly," the servant responded. "But I heard he was a lecher in the Liao kingdom who always wanted to take pretty girls for himself. Apparently, he even slept with his sworn brother's wife." Murong Lian sighed. "So he's a pervert." He thought to himself that the rumors spreading among the people might not be too far off. The cook might indeed be a lecherous rapist with some kind of insane craving. Why else would he keep those 5 women by his side? "What about him and Gumang?" Murong Lian asked. "Did they interact?" "I don't think they were ever close." Murong Lian murmured under his breath, then said, "I understand. You may withdraw." After the servant left, Murong Lian spoke to the attendant. "Bring me my silver fox fur coat, the warmest one. I'm going to the prison to interrogate Gumang." If Murong Lian was focusing on interrogation, then Mo Shi was thoroughly intent on investigation. He was analyzing every detail of the crime scene. "Hi, Henry. Why does every serial killer have something to do with brothel girls?" Henry, I'm not sure that we have confirmation either way, but people are spreading a rumor that the cook is a ghost. We don't know if the cook is a ghost. I don't know. The Mansion of Beauty's case was seriously bizarre. If the culprit was a vengeful ghost, how had it written anything? If they were a living person, why had they bothered digging out their victims' hearts? Mo Shi ordered Shenong Terrace to continue examining the wounds on the dead in hopes of finding more clues. After examining each corpse one by one, the healers discovered traces of concealed sword-inflicted injuries. But those marks were quite peculiar as well, which only made the entire case all the more confusing. What's strange about the wounds? The healer hesitated before replying. The water-parting sword. Mo Shi immediately looked up. The water-parting sword Li Qingqian? Exactly so. How could it be? Mo Shi murmured. The swordsman Zhongshu Li Qingqian was a cultivator who had been born in Lichun. And there's a footnote for Zhongshu, which is honorific term for a master cultivator of particularly outstanding skill. He had been poor in coin and kind of heart. He'd roamed the lands for more than a decade, exorcising and defeating countless demons, but had also been helplessly naive. Oftentimes, he'd been the one risking his life to stave off calamity, but ill-intentioned cultivators had always ended up stealing his glory. Thus, even after 10 years of hard work, he'd labored in obscurity. Until the year he fought the Battle of Maiden's Lament Mountain. Maiden's Lament Mountain was in the Liao Kingdom territory. It had once been known as Phoenix Feather Mountain, but the Liao Kingdom military had at one point gathered some 100 women from who knows where, dressed them all in crimson wedding robes, and buried them alive amid the sounds of their anguished wails. The explanation given by the Liao Kingdom's Guoshi had been, the stars say that this mountain god requires sacrifices, and Guoshi has a footnote, powerful imperial official who served as an advisor to the emperor. After those aggrieved women were buried, their hatred soared relentlessly up toward the heavens. Many roaming cultivators had come forward to try to exorcise them, but they had all died at the hands of the maiden ghosts. Therefore, the terrified local villagers below Phoenix Feather Mountain had renamed it Maiden's Lament Mountain. The mountain bride, all night she cried. First she hates her helpless fate. Second hates her ill-starred face. Third their parting does she hate. A lost love left too late. Garbed in scarlet, crowned in gold. Once she laughs, face warped by hate. Twice she laughs, blood streaks her face. Thrice she laughs, and with that last, forever seals your fate. These verses told of the corpses of the countless beauties who had been buried alive on the mountain. Any crossing had to be completed within a single day when yang energy was at its peak, and the party could include no women, children, sick, or elderly. To do anything else would agitate the hundreds of vengeful ghosts upon the mountain. With the sound of 3 laughs, the ghosts would appear behind their victims, and all the travelers would perish on the mountainside. After Li Qingqian heard of this, he went to Maiden's Lament Mountain to suppress the ghosts. At the time, even though he had defeated countless demons, he had never cared to build up his reputation, so not many people knew his name. When the magistrate saw this young cultivator in patched-up clothes, looking like some nobody, he couldn't stand idly by. Even though the bounty is high, there are hundreds of ghosts on that mountain, every one of them a terrible fiend. Xianzhang, don't put your life at risk. And Xianzhang also has a footnote, a polite term of address for a cultivator. But Li Qingqian only replied that he wasn't seeking riches. Then he walked up the mountain, accompanied by nothing more than the sword at his side. His trip lasted 3 days. Just as everyone began to sigh that another cultivator had died on the mountainside, the anguished howling of hundreds of women burst out of Maiden's Lament Mountain, along with a beam of jade-colored light that could be seen from miles away. Later, when people described that sword, their expressions would grow dreamy, and they would sigh, mesmerized by the past. The water-parting sword forms, they would say, can reach as far as the eye can see, even piercing the 9 heavens. All that glitters is not gold, but true gold always shines. Li Qingqian had been buried in obscurity for many years, but this battle finally brought him fame. To this day, countless storytellers still passionately recounted his austere strength of character. Those jade-green robes fluttering in the wind, a sword in one hand and a soul lantern in the other, as he floated down from the mountain path. What's more, Li Qingqian had sealed hundreds of vengeful ghosts' souls during this battle. These souls couldn't have been better suited for refining weapons. Any artificer would pay such a high price for them that Li Qingqian would never have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of his life. But Li Qingqian didn't have the heart to sell them. Every one of them is a maiden from a pitiful family, buried alive as a sacrifice to the mountain at such a young age, and made into a vengeful ghost to do harm. This was not their intent. It would be far too cruel to refine them into magical tools. they'd never be able to reincarnate. So, Li Qingqian resolved to travel to an island with potent spiritual energy in the Eastern Sea and help these hundreds of souls pass on. Because their hatred was so deep and their number so great, it was entirely possible that it would take more than a decade to complete the task. Before Li Qingqian left, he passed his water-parting sword manual to his younger brother, reminding the young man to work hard in cultivating and to use these sword techniques to do good as much as he could. As for himself, Li Qingqian vanished without a trace into the vast mortal world. Well, now I'm wondering about the brother. The healer from Shenong Terrace spoke cautiously. Even though Li Zongshe is said to be righteous, these corpses bear the marks of the water-parting sword. Could it be that the rumors are false? Impossible. Moshi closed his eyes. Before Li Qingqian became famous, I had the good fortune to meet him. He was indeed a righteous man. He would never do such a despicable thing. Then could it be his younger brother? Moshi shook his head. The water-parting sword is very difficult to cultivate. It would be impossible to use without 10, even 20 years of arduous work, and Li Hou-de has only possessed his elder brother's sword manual for a few short years. The timeline doesn't add up. After the healer from Shenong Terrace completed their report, Moshi sat in the courtyard, eyes closed and brow knitted, carefully thinking through the connections between these events. Li Wei asked curiously, "My lord, everyone at the street stalls is saying the culprit is a rapist. Some strange fixation made him kill a bunch of the people in a brothel, but he kept 5 beauties to carry off. Is that not how you see it?" "It isn't." Li Wei hadn't expected Moshi to so directly refute the city's hottest theory. He blinked, taken aback. Why? Moshi unrolled a scroll of spirit jade on the table. The names and appearances of the deceased, as well as of those 5 missing women, materialized on its surface. "Come look at this." Li Wei drew closer and looked at it intently for a good long time. He couldn't find any problems, and so replied obsequiously, "This subordinate is too dull to perceive the workings of heaven." "Pick out the best-looking 5, Moshi said. Li Wei loved doing things like comparing and ranking people, so he pointed at a few of the brothel's beauties with all due speed. Her, and her, nope, she isn't as pretty as the one next to her. As he happily made his selection, Shihajun said, "Have you noticed that not a single one of the maidens you've chosen was taken by this rapist?" "Huh." Li Wei was stumped for a second, and his eyes widened. "It's just as you say." He ignored the star songstress and beheaded many of the most beautiful courtesans to keep these 5. Moshi looked at the little portraits on the jade scroll and crossed his arms as he murmured, as if he were explaining himself to Li Wei, or as if he were sinking back into his thoughts. He did not do this for women. This humble one is lonely, sincerely seeking wives, likely doesn't reflect his true intentions. At that moment, a servant of Shiha Manor hurried over. My lord! My lord!" "What is it?" Moshi turned, frowning. "Has something happened?" "You had Xiao Lizi keep an eye on Gumong's movements in the prison. Just now, Xiao Lizi sent a message. Wang Shujun suspects that Gumong had something to do with the Mountain of Beauty's murder case. So... Moshi's expression instantly shifted. So he went to interrogate Gumong alone in the Chamber of Ice. That room has no windows, so Xiao Lizi has no idea what was happening within, and he didn't dare alert you without reason. So he waited until Wang Shujun came out. But then he saw..." Gumong was already. He was already. He pathetically swallowed, mustering the courage to continue. But Moshi didn't wait for him to finish. He'd already thrown down the jade scrolls and rushed straight for the prison without a backward glance. That's the end of that chapter. I'm just looking at the chat. That was a lot, kind of a lot of information to absorb. Yeah, there's a little bit of a Yi City vibe. Okay. I don't know what we assumed that Gumong did. Maybe went berserk again? Escaped? But let's find out. We're on page 275 for chapter 25, which is called I Want a Home. The chamber of ice in the prison was lightless, airless. Its interior was no larger than a cowshed, but the walls were a foot thick, and it was barred with 3 layers of gates. Every serious case involving the imprisonment and interrogation of unforgivable criminals was conducted within its walls. No gods above, no escape below. A bleak prison cell filled with the midnight wailing of 10,000 ghosts. Who knew how many prisoners had died upon the bone-chilling stone bed in the chamber of ice, and how many years' worth of coagulated blood had seeped into the cracks of the heavy, ice-rimmed bricks. Treat him quickly. Stop the bleeding. It is His Imperial Majesty's command that this person does not die. In the dim prison, the warden irritably gave directions. The healers who answered to him rushed back and forth in the cell, scrambling for spiritual medicines and magical implements, while younger disciples rushed to pour out the bloody water wiped from the wounds. The warden clapped a hand over his forehead, sighing, "My God, Wangshu-jun was too vicious. What even happened here?" In their frazzled haste, they suddenly heard someone announce from outside, "Shiha-jun has arrived." The warden nearly bit off his own tongue. Wangshu comes, Wangshu goes. Shiha comes after Wangshu goes. Were they the sun and the moon, taking turns to rise in the east and set in the west, not stopping until they had killed Gumong? If he were merely some traitor, they could kill him and no one would care. How many people had ever left an interrogation in the Chamber of Ice alive? But His Imperial Majesty insisted that this person was to remain alive, so if these 2 noble masters kept having their fun, the sucker who'd have to mop up afterward would be him. Cursing inwardly, the warden nevertheless put on a warm and enthusiastic smile to greet his visitor. "Ayo, Shiha-jun's here. This subordinate was too busy to welcome you. I am remiss, and I ask Shiha-jun to forgive me, and not to find fault with someone as—" Low as the subordinate didn't leave his mouth before Moshi lifted a hand to cut him off. He didn't spare the warden a single glance as he headed straight into the chamber of ice. The warden rushed after him. "Shiha-jun, you can't. Gumong is covered in wounds. He's not even conscious, even if you wanted to interrogate him." "I wish to see him." "But Shiha-jun—" "I said I wish to see him," Moshi said angrily. "Do you not understand?" The warden was stunned. "Move aside." How would the warden dare to stop him? He swiftly turned to let Moshi pass, then followed right behind. The chamber of ice was suffused with a bitter cold. The only source of light was a faint blue flame lapping in a skull-shaped lamp. Gumong lay on a stone bed, his white prisoner's garb dyed scarlet, crimson water dripping from the blood grooves in the stone. His face was terrifyingly pale, his eyes wide and unseeing. Moshi walked to his side in silence, betraying no perceptible reaction. Wang Shujun suspected that he had something to do with the Mansion of Beauty's murders, the warden cautiously explained. So he used the Draught of Confession on Gumong and tried the soul recording spell to dig memories from his head, but nothing worked. Moshi made no sound. He gazed at the body on the stone bed. The surrounding healers were hurriedly treating the curse wounds on his body, but Gumong's injuries were numerous and deep. As it stood, they couldn't even slow the bleeding. "See, Shihajun," the warden grimaced. "As I said, he's close to death. Even if you wanted to interrogate him right now, he wouldn't be able to answer a single question. Earlier, Wang Shujun used all sorts of methods and still left infuriated, so he likely didn't succeed either. Why don't you return another day? Get out." The warden blinked. "Get out!" The warden scrambled toward the door, his face contorted. He watched Moshi drive off the healers, one after another, and it took all his courage to shout at Moshi's retreating back. "Shihajun, His Imperial Majesty wants Gumong alive. Remember to have some mercy." Shihajun had already lowered all 3 gates with a wave of his hand. The warden suppressed the urge to weep as he gave instructions to his disciples. Go get that divine tincture of life I keep at the bottom of that one chest. Once Shihajun comes out, I suspect only divine tincture of life will keep that little traitor alive." The room was now empty, save for 2. This narrow, sealed world was just as the folk songs said. No gods above, no escape below. The walls were a foot thick, separating those within from the rest of the world, leaving only Gumong and Moshi. Moshi walked to the side of the bed, lowering his lashes to look at Gumong's face. After a few moments of stillness, he abruptly reached out and lifted him to sitting. "Gumong." Moshi's mouth opened and closed slightly. His face was still as stagnant water, but his hands were trembling. "You'd better wake up." Gumong's only response was to stare from those unfocused eyes. Both the Draught of Confession and the soul recording spell devastated their target's mind. It wasn't so bad if they obediently confessed, but if they happened to resist, they would feel as if their organs were burning and their innards were tearing apart. Many strong, unyielding individuals might withstand beating and torture, but these 2 truth-compelling techniques would still drive them crazy. Furthermore, Moshi knew that the Liao Kingdom often cast forbidden, secret-keeping spells on the bodies of their soldiers and generals to keep military secrets from being divulged. If such forbidden Liao techniques had clashed with Murong Lian's soul recording spell, they would doubtless result in double the agony. Moshi swallowed thickly. This was the first time he had seen what an interrogation did to Gumong with his own eyes. It hurt. It hurt so much. Gumong had betrayed him, had tried to kill him. His hands were stained with blood, and his crimes could never be pardoned. But this was also the man who had once abandoned everything before the throne, caring nothing for his life, his rank, or his future prospects, as he fearlessly shouted at the emperor merely so his soldiers could be properly buried. This was also the man who had once kept Moshi company by a bonfire, roasting meat and chatting with him, smiling at and teasing him as Moshi sat wordless by his side. This was also the man who had once, in bed, murmured to Moshi that he loved him. That spirited, valiant war god's body had seemed as if it would never cool. That youthful, brilliant young man had seemed as if he would blaze passionately all his life. Yet all that remained was the scarred and wounded ruin in front of Moshi's eyes. At that, a thought occurred to Moshi. clear as day. He had been away from the capital for a full 2 years. In that time, how many interrogations of this sort had taken place? So many people wanted to pry words from Gumong's mouth and obtain the secrets of the Liao Kingdom. Exactly how many times had he been brutalized beyond the pains of death? How many times had Gumong's agonized howling gone unheard? As Moshi's pain deepened, his reason was swiftly disappearing. The two of us will always be together, no matter how hard. I will endure until the end. Shidi. Moshi squeezed his eyes shut, suddenly no longer able to bear it. Clenching his jaw, he pulled Gumong into his arms. Radiance gathered in his hands as he pressed them against Gumong's back and passed the purest, most potent spiritual energy he possessed into that blood-stained body. Moshi knew he shouldn't do it. He would be discovered, and he had no way to explain why he'd rushed in to personally heal Gumong's wounds. He understood that he should give Gumong over to the prison's healers. These people wouldn't defy the Emperor's orders and let Gumong come to further harm, and Muranglian's work might not have been fatal. But Moshi couldn't hold back. His heart seemed to have been snatched away and torn apart, tormented as it had been by more than a decade of love and hatred, unanswered yearning, and stubborn attachment. It was as though, if he didn't take hold of this body before him, if he didn't personally pass him spiritual energy, he would be the one to die in this chamber of ice. Most of the wounds on Gumong's body had come from Muranglian's holy weapon, and they healed with awful slowness. In the process of stopping the bleeding and treating Gumong's injuries, Moshi's military robes were almost entirely soaked. As Gumong's limbs gradually began to recover, he unconsciously began to shudder, his bloody hands quivering incessantly. After a long while, Gumong started to mumble, I don't know anything." Moshi had been silent this whole time, not saying a single word as he held Gumong. He didn't dare to be too intimate, as if any closeness were a colossal sin. But he refused to let go. He felt his own heart would stop if he did. He closed his eyes, slowly sending vigorous spiritual energy into Gumong's body. Other than Gumong's half-conscious mumbling, there were no other sounds in the chamber of ice. Eventually, amid this hush, Moshi heard him mutter something new. I think we know what he's maybe going to say, but also there's art that we get. Fortunately or unfortunately, you get to see this. Blue turnips, I have words for meat bun. Me too. Always. Moshi was stunned. What? Gumong's voice softened further, almost as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Tearful, trembling, shaking. Home. This final word drifted down, soft as a willow fluff, but it exploded in Moshi's ears like a clap of thunder. Moshi stared down at Gumong's face and found that his eyes were tightly closed. His long, dark lashes, laid over the purplish shadows before his eyes, were wet. Gumong had choked out those words in a dream. Many years ago, Moshi had once kissed Gumong's fingers in the throes of love and desire and said earnestly, "I've been named Shihajun by the Emperor. In the future, I'll never need to bow to my uncle's whims again. No one can make me do anything. No one can stop me from doing anything. I will achieve everything that I promised you. Wait for me. I mean it." Before this moment, Moshi had never dreamed to speak of meaning it or the future to Gumong, because Gumong had always looked as if he didn't care, and like he didn't believe him. But on that day, Moshi became Shihajun. He was no longer merely the young Mogongze under the thumb of his uncle. He finally had the courage to promise a future to his beloved, as if he'd saved up long enough to afford a presentable treasure, and was carefully and cautiously offering it to the one he loved with wholehearted delight, in hopes it would be accepted. Moshi wanted to carve out his entire heart. He wanted to swear all the oaths in the world, just for a word of acknowledgement from Gumong. Moshi had said so many things that day in their bed. Gumong had smiled as he patted Moshi's hair and let Moshi fuck him relentlessly, unstoppably. He seemed to listen to and understand everything. Yet he also seemed to find his little Shidi merely adorable, a little dummy. No matter how fierce Moshi became, no matter if he was or wasn't Shihajun, his Gumong Guga would cherish and indulge him for a lifetime. "What do you like? What do you want?" Moshi asked. Gumong didn't say anything, didn't ask for anything. In the end, after the point Moshi couldn't count how many times he'd come inside Gumong, after he'd fucked Gumong into tearful delirium, Gumong spoke. Whether because his thoughts were scattered, or because he was completely spent, Gumong tilted his head back to gaze at the inky swirls of the Hui-patterned canopy and mumbled, I want a home." Moshi was stunned. He suspected he would never in his life forget Gumong's expression when he said these words. Gumong had always been such a smiling, carefree man, but when he said this, he didn't dare to look Moshi in the eye. He was such a confident person, but in that moment, only hesitance and fear remained. It was as if Gumong was begging for something unspeakably precious, pleading for a fantasy he could never hope to attain. After saying this, Gumong closed his eyes, tears rolling down from their reddened rims. Moshi wasn't quite sure whether they were the tears Gumong usually shed when they went to bed. Moshi realized then, with impossible clarity, that the invincible General Gu was, in the end, still an orphaned slave. He had been beaten and cursed at for more than 20 years, without a true home that he could call his own, without a single person he could call family. Moshi felt a painful pressure in his heart, an unbearable ache. He leaned down, pressing his lips to Gumong's wet and trembling mouth. In the spaces between their gaping breaths, he stroked Gumong's hair and whispered, "Okay, I'll give it to you. I will give it to you. I will give you a home. This is the first time you've asked me for anything. Even if it's a joke, even if it's nonsense, I'll take it seriously. I know your life's been horribly hard. So many people have bullied you, toyed with you. So you don't dare accept what others give you. You don't dare believe what others promise you. But I would never lie to you. Wait for me. Wait for me. I'll do my best. Upon battlefields of blood, I'll make my name. I'll use all my war-won merits for the right to be with you. Wait for me. I will give you a home." Moshi's past self had fervently, naively, made this promise in his heart. It won't take too many years. It won't be too long. I will give you a home. I want to stay with you, always. Heartsore, the young Moshi had stroked his Gumong Guga's face, begging him with such imploring need. "Gumong, wait a little longer for me, won't you?" That's the end of that chapter. Nobody yearns like Moshi. Exactly, Rena. Hands kiss. I know. Henry. My Moshi, my beautiful little meow meow. That's how I feel too. Also, ow. War Dove, you're correct. I guess we're gonna go on to the next chapter. Before we take a break, which is chapter 26, Secretly Watching Over You. I don't like the sound of that, or maybe I do, I don't know. When Moshi exited the chamber of ice, the warden felt his soul was about to evaporate. After Wang Shujun the Cruel had come to interrogate Gumong earlier, he'd come out wearing a set of pristine, sapphire blue robes. Even the moonstone pendant at his chest had been perfectly straight. But once the warden had gone in to look, good heavens, Gumong had been drenched in blood. I almost forgot how bad that would look. Wang Shujun had left Gumong in that terrible state without getting a drop of gore on himself. So if Shihajun's martial robes were completely soaked through, then didn't that mean Gumong was... At this thought, the warden's knees went weak, and he nearly fell to the floor. Fortunately, a nearby disciple stepped up to support him in time, so he managed to remain upright, if barely, as he shakily bowed to Moshi. Shihajun, safe travels. Moshi stalked wordlessly out of that cold and ghastly prison corridor, his face ashen, lips pursed. He didn't look back. Those military boots, inlaid with iron plating, clicked crisply against the icy brick. Divine tincture of life! Divine tincture of life! Hurry up! Hurry up! Hurry up! The warden's hands shook as he grasped the spiritual medicine that could regrow flesh and reverse necrosis. Leading a dense flock of healers, he rushed into the chamber of ice. Before he could get his bearings, he stopped short, shocked. Gumong lay on the stone bed, covered by a warm black and gold fur coat. The thin face, visible within the depths of the fur, was clean. The disciple was shocked. Shifu, what happened? The warden swept a glance over the coat, and his gaze landed on the intricate golden snake totem on its sleeves. His heart pounded. Wasn't that the insignia of the Northern Frontier Army? Come to think of it, Moshi had plainly worn a warm greatcoat when he entered the prison, but when he left, he had been wearing a practical set of fitted black robes. So was it possible that this coat was... Swallowing, the warden took a few steps forward and timidly lifted a corner of the coat. Gumong was curled up asleep underneath, his breathing even, and his wounds no longer bleeding. The warden was astonished. He had a faint feeling that something wasn't quite right. But when he thought of Moshi's usual countenance of icy pride, and then of how Gumong had once mercilessly stabbed Moshi, this brazen conjecture was rapidly extinguished. The disciple craned his neck for a better look. After staring for several seconds, he jerked back in surprise. Ayah, isn't that Shihajun's outer robe? The warden didn't immediately respond. Shifu, don't they say Shihajun is a clean freak? That he never lets anyone touch his belongings? The warden turned, rather speechless. Don't tell me you think he wants this coat back. Oh. The disciple scratched his head in embarrassment. Of course not. After a second, his curiosity got the better of him once again. But didn't Shihajun come to interrogate Gumong? Why would he treat a prisoner so well? It's not like he's an official with a penchant for torture. Although the warden was still apprehensive, he had a keen understanding of what should and shouldn't be speculated on. Patting the little disciple's shoulder, he said meaningfully, Not everyone is as fond of bloodshed as Wang Shujun. Oh. The warden turned to give instructions to the rest. With regard to what transpired today, you must all be careful. Don't spread word of it to outsiders. He shot another glance at the flying snake flashing gold on the fur coat and lowered his voice. Remember, too much talk brings trouble. Moshi walked along the snowy main road. The west wind whipped across his face. He didn't have a coat, but somehow he didn't feel chilled. His penetrating gaze was all ablaze, and his heart thundered like a drum as Gumong's low murmur reverberated endlessly in his ears. I want a home. A spark seemed to have landed on the mess of kindling that was his heart. The flames roared up from his chest and burned so fiercely that even the rims of his eyes reddened slightly. Moshi's belief that Gumong's mind might not have been damaged rooted ever deeper. Why else would he mumble those words in his delirium? The flames dancing in his chest were both torment and hope. He was so caught up in his thoughts that he didn't notice his blood-soaked clothes attracting the furtive glances of passerby. The snow fell faster, but the light in Moshi's eyes only grew brighter. He decided that no matter what, once this case concluded, he had to wrest Gumong from Muranglian. Only then could he observe Gumong from dawn till dusk. Only then could he determine if Gumong truly was faking stupidity or whether he was genuinely insane. As he walked, consumed by these thoughts, a sudden shrill scream rose in the distance. Moshi stopped and looked up, searching for the source of the sound. The capital was in a state of high alert, so he hastened in the direction of the scream. It was a tavern. The chairs and tables were splintered and broken, and a good number of the wine jugs piled in the corner were smashed. Aged pear blossom white wine seeped into the floor, and the sharp scent of alcohol pervaded the room. The customers were pushing and shoving one another to run out. Only a few cultivators, who'd happened to be drinking there, were still on the premises. They were in a private room on the second floor, and their number included Yue Chunqing. Yue Chunqing had a hand pressed over a still bleeding wound on his arm, and he was cursing furiously. This was a true rarity. He had a good temper and wasn't easily angered. But at the moment, Yue Chunqing was fair smoking with rage, his mouth full of frustrations. Scaredy cat, little turtle, no friend at all. Being a simple and cheerful person who so rarely cursed at people, he repeated the only swear words he knew over and over again, among which even little turtle counted as profanity. Good heavens, it hurts. Moshi reached the second floor with all speed, where he bumped straight into Yue Chunqing, who was still shouting with anger, "Big bad dog!" When the young man raised his head, he found he had happened to curse directly at Moshi. Moshi stared at him. Yue Chunqing was startled, his round eyes growing even wider. "Shihajun, how come you're here? I wasn't referring to you." What happened? Moshi's gaze swept over Yue Chunqing. "You're injured?" Yes. There was a formidable man in black here a second ago who flipped in through the window to kidnap the tavern's Xiao Cui Jiejie. Yue Chunqing spoke in a rush. How many times am I going to have to say this name? Xiao Cui Jiejie is always so cute. Every time we buy wine, she gives the bros extra. Sometimes she even gives us peanuts and kidney bean cakes, even though kidney bean cakes aren't that tasty, but still. Kidney bean cake. Like it has kidney beans in it? Get to the point. Oh, right. The point. Yue Chunqing molded over, still steaming mad. The point is, as soon as I noticed things weren't right, I rushed up to stop the man in black with a few of my friends. But that ruffian used some kind of strange demonic techniques. I couldn't even touch his sleeve before he slashed me with his sword. Some friends I've got, as soon as they saw me injured, they all ran off. Can you believe it? They're all little turtles. The more he spoke, the angrier he got, until he looked as though he was about to spit blood. It turns out the Chonghua Youth Society is a gang of phonies. Seriously, they're so shallow. Moshi was speechless. The Chonghua Youth Society was a little group that consisted of Yue Chunqing and a crowd of young juniors. A crowd of Gongzi bros whose hobbies were social climbing and putting on airs, and who spent their days parading themselves around together. They even secretly gave themselves Jianghu sobriquets, things like Proud Dragon and Brocade Tiger. Moshi had always felt that this was very stupid, and upon hearing Yue Chunqing decry them, he naturally added his own stern rebuke. I told you not to mess around with those people, but you wouldn't listen. Is your wound serious? It's fine, it's fine. Yue Chunqing wore a lifeless expression. It's just that I feel such a bitter disappointment over my brother's betrayal. Now I can finally experience what you felt, Shihajun, back when you... He realized mid-sentence that he was headed in a dangerous direction and hastily shut his mouth, peering wide-eyed at Moshi. Moshi considered for a moment, then asked, "Where did the man in black go?" "I don't know. He moved too quickly. He didn't even seem human. There was just a whoosh, and even his shadow had disappeared. Oh, my poor Xiao Cui Jiejie. Shihajun, do you think he was that two-pump chump guy?" Moshi frowned. What? Only then did Yue Chunqing realize that given how busy Moshi had been, he definitely hadn't heard that particular storyteller's embellished version of the brothel murder case. "I meant the Mansion of Beauty's murderer," he explained. "Let me take a look at your wound." Feeling sorry for himself, Yue Chunqing showed him. Moshi examined Yue Chunqing's injury, his sharp brows furrowing deeper. "It's the water-parting sword." Yue Chunqing started. "The water-parting sword Zongshe Li Qingqian?" he asked in astonishment. Moshi shook his head, neither confirming nor denying. All he said was, "Go home for now. The capital has been especially chaotic recently. Unless you have an urgent matter to attend to, don't go running around outside." My dad went to Rongliu Mountain to cultivate in seclusion, and my fourth uncle is so aloof he ignores me completely. I can't stay in that manner alone. "Then go to your brother's." Yue Chunqing hesitated, then mumbled, "He's not my brother." Yue Chunqing had been influenced by the Yue clan since he was young, so his impression of Jiang Yeshue wasn't particularly good. He thought of him as a good-for-nothing who'd brought shame to the Yue clan. But he couldn't say as much in front of Moshi, so he was compelled to change the subject. "Right. Shihajun, where did you come from? Why are your clothes all bloody?" Moshi looked down. After a long while, he said, "I dealt with someone." Dealt with someone? Judging by those red-soaked robes, Shihajun might have beaten that person to death. "No more questions," Moshi said. "Can you draw a portrait of the girl who was taken, that Miss Xiao Cui?" "Yes, let me give it a try." Yue Chunqing asked the tavern's proprietress for paper and a brush. At once, a youthful girl's features appeared in vivid detail on the paper. Moshi watched from the side, but even up until the last brushstroke, he couldn't identify what was special about this maiden. Just as he was planning to ask the proprietress about her background, Yue Chunqing seized the brush he had set down. Wait a minute, something's missing. He hastily added a mole at the end of Xiao Cui's eye. Only then did he pronounce himself satisfied. Right, now it's perfect. Does the guy have a thing about moles? Moshi widened his eyes slightly. She has an eye mole too? Huh? What do you mean two? Who else has one? Of the 5 escorts taken from the Mansion of Beauties, said Moshi, one of them had a similar mole. As he explained to Yue Chunqing, A thought occurred to him. As far as the rapist was concerned, the eye mole might be an extremely important attribute. It might have even bought that prostitute's survival. He was still considering this when he heard Yue Chunqing speak up hesitantly once more. Actually, Shihajun, there's something else I wanted to tell you. Speak. Well, I might be mistaken, but when I was crossing blows with the man in black, I couldn't see his face, but I kept feeling that he had a certain odor, something I'm very familiar with. What odor? Moshi asked. Where did you smell it before? It's not quite an odor. It's more a type of, I don't know how to describe it. Type of aura. I felt like I'd experienced it somewhere before, but I was fighting too intently, and he left too quickly, so I didn't have time to carefully analyze it before he disappeared. Yue Chunqing sighed. Shihajun, do you think he really is that Mansion of Beauty's murderer? I can't be sure. Moshi thought about it further and said, How about this? Yue Chunqing, go to Shenong Terrace and get your wounds treated. Then stop by the Bureau of Public Safety and pass on a message. What message? If my guess is correct, that rapist is looking for women with certain characteristics, Moshi said, studying Xiao Tui's portrait. The eye mole ought to be one of them. Have the Bureau of Public Safety inform the city and ask maidens who share those characteristics to go to the Bureau for temporary protection. Oh, okay, Yue Chunqing agreed. He was about to leave when he thought of something and turned on his heel. Right, Shihajun. I heard Murong Daga received his Imperial Majesty's authorization to interrogate Gumong whenever he wanted. Did you know about this? It seems like Gumong is still useful to you, Shihajun. But if Murong Daga goes to interrogate him, I'm afraid he'll interrogate him half to death. Do you want to? It's of no consequence. Moshi shook his head, unconsciously caressing a black-silver thumb ring as his eyes slowly darkened. When he had treated Gumong's wounds just now, he had planted a tracking talisman exclusive to the Mo clan within his body. So long as it was active, whenever anything unusual happened to Gumong, this silver ring would heat up and tell Moshi where Gumong was, as well as his condition. He very truly had no wish to see Gumong in the aftermath of such torture again. I've already made my preparations, Moshi said. Whatever Murong Lian does next, I'll know about it. You needn't worry. After leaving Yue Chunqing, Moshi returned to his manor, where he again took out the jade scroll with the likeness of those 5 prostitutes. He placed Xiao Tui's portrait next to the songstress with an eye mole and stared at the other 4 faces. None of the other 4 had any noteworthy features. There was no way to discern further details from these paintings. But that didn't remain the case for long. As the number of missing women in the city steadily increased, Shiha Manor received more and more portraits. Once they were sorted, their similarities became apparent. For example, their lips had the same shape, or their noses were identical. Based on these patterns, Moshi had the Imperial Guards invite every woman with these attributes to the Bureau of Public Safety for protection. Soon after, women stopped going missing. Only a few maidens who hadn't yet been taken into custody by the Bureau were kidnapped by the rapist now and again. Instead, it was the cultivators who started to worry. If Chengtian Terrace's elder Yu was no match for that scoundrel, what would we do if he tried to carve out our hearts? I've become too scared to cultivate alone in the woods. As the year came to an end... Okay, so we're making a big, kind of a leap in time now. Time is going by. As the year came to an end, The usual hustle and bustle of Chonghua City ground to a halt. People went out only in groups and rushed back home before night fell, and the Yue clan's barrier talismans sold faster than ever. Many of those who failed to snag a talisman in time refused to sleep apart from their weapons. As for those who couldn't afford the talismans, they could only cry and shout and beg at the gates of Yue Manor for mercy, to let them buy on credit and pay them back later. Yue Chunqing wasn't entitled to make decisions regarding such things. His father was away, so his paternal uncle came out to furiously shoo off the penniless little cultivators. "The hell is all this?" he cursed at them. "Who do you think you are, behaving like this before an elite cultivator's manor? Yue Manor's talismans are unbreakable. They're worth what we charge and no less. Can't afford it? Go borrow money from your brothers and friends." The storytellers were too afraid to tell stories anymore. Besides, the situation was getting worse and worse, so who would dare come to listen and laugh? The red paste paper outside Yuelai Tea House that said, "Enraged brothel guest kills 70, gradually disintegrated in the wind and snow." Rainwater soaked into the brushstrokes, rendering the words forever illegible. Then one night, it stopped snowing. The capital was an expanse of pure moonlight. Also, I said, oh, we have kind of a jump in time, but it just occurred to me it was close to the end of the year already. So, maybe not that big a jump. Moshi sat in Shiha Manor's courtyard, reading the intelligence reports that had accumulated in the past few days, as he unconsciously spun and caressed the silver soaring snake ring on his thumb. He had often found himself doing this of late. The tracking ring felt like a secret, selfish tie linking him to Gumong, and he was only at ease when it was safe. However, on that silent night, just as he was about to roll up a scroll and retire, the ring burned with searing heat. Moshi immediately looked down to see the snake insignia on the ring begin to twist and turn, slowly transforming into an arrow that pointed toward the southwest of the capital. The silver snake's body began to change color, flickering and gleaming until every one of its scales finally flashed jade green. The scales turning green meant the one being tracked had been drugged. This wasn't unexpected. Mu Ronglian often gave the prisoners he interrogated a variety of illusion-inducing medicines. The issue lay in the direction. The prison was not in the southwest of the capital. Rather, that was where the resting place of Chonghua's heroes lay, Warrior Soul Mountain. Why would Gumong be taken from the prison and be sent toward Warrior Soul Mountain? Practically simultaneous to this thought, Moshi saw golden light burst from every guard barrier in the capital as the warning bell in the Imperial City rang out. Clang, 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 one chime after another, 13 in total before it stilled. A dangerous criminal had broken out of prison. Gumong had escaped? Well, that's the end of that chapter. The next chapter, 27, is called Dream of Longing. I'm gonna look at the chat, and then I guess we're gonna take a break here. Blue turnips. The man in black has omega pheromones. Yeah, Henry, he microchipped his ex-boyfriend. That's, yeah, exactly. Word of quite a lot of ladies, it seems. Henry, yeah, the ring sounds very cool. I mean, Meat Bun is just being Meat Bun. I don't know what she's gonna do next. That's just how it is. So, I'm gonna take a 10-minute break, and then we will be back at chapter 27. And we'll read until 5 something, wherever, the end of the chapter we're on conveniently falls. Anyway, I will see y'all in a bit. Hello, I'm back. I use my phone as a camera and it had a low battery warning, so I was just like, wait a minute, forgot to plug it in. We're all good now. I have the iPhone something mini. I forget what, like, number it is, but, like, it runs out of battery very quickly. That's kind of the cost of it being super small, I guess. Hello. Yeah, Henry Meatbun does love her on-the-nose dog motifs. Okay. I think it's been 10 minutes. We're on page 297 for chapter 27, which is called Dream of Longing. The situation was too urgent for Moshi to personally inform the Emperor. He sent a messenger butterfly winging to the palace and took the initiative to rush to the foot of Warrior Soul Mountain. At the entrance, he found that the 2 cultivators guarding the mountain were already dead. Their eyeballs had been gouged out, and their hearts taken as well. They had died in the same way as Elder Yuwu. The ring on Moshi's hand grew hotter and hotter, and it pointed straight at that blood-splattered mountain path. Moshi stared at the ring for a moment, gritting his teeth. Gumong, is it really you? He swept straight up the mountain, blood running cold. The terrain of Warrior Soul Mountain was difficult to traverse. Its cloud-encircled peak was the resting place for generations and dynasties of Chonghua's heroes. It was said that, in the dead of night, the whinnying of war horses and the clanging of copper bells still sounded from the mountain, as if to lend credence to the legend that so long as the fires of war burned across the 9 provinces, the souls of Chonghua's heroes would know no peace. Many magical navigation devices were befuddled by the mountain's flow of spiritual energy, and would fail to point in the correct direction. Even Moshi's silver ring was affected, recalibrating many times before it spun once more. Moshi arrived at the foothills of Warrior Soul Mountain and stopped, staring at the faint mist that suffused the dense forest. Dream of longing, he murmured. Indeed, this was no ordinary mountain mist, but rather the dream of longing technique, which only elite Liao Kingdom cultivators could use. This illusion could transform one's true surroundings into an entirely new world. If the technique detected your desires and you sunk within them, your mind would be left vulnerable to destruction. Moshi, however, had fought many Liao Kingdom spellcasters who used Dream of Longing on the battlefields. Resisting it wasn't particularly arduous for him. The needle tip of the ring was pointing right into the thick of it, which could only mean that Gumong was currently within that illusory mist from Dream of Longing. Moshi had to enter. He pondered this for a spell before lifting his head and gravely intoning, Illusion Butterfly. A messenger butterfly materialized in response to his summons. Report the location and situation to His Imperial Majesty, Moshi said. I will go forth to investigate. Have him send assistance. The butterfly fluttered its wings, and in a blink, it disappeared into the depths of the mountain forest. Moshi stepped into the dense, unrelenting fog. He was surrounded by white haze so thick it was difficult to see his own fingers. Gumong, he shouted. Gumong, come out. Moshi's voice echoed in the mist. After a moment, soft laughter floated out from the damp, chilly murk. Shihajun? The speaker was not Gumong. He sighed. Ah, how interesting. I did sense a foreign spiritual flow in my captive beast of the altar. It seems you've put a tracking talisman on him. Who are you, good sir? Moshi asked carefully. Shihajun's been investigating the brothel case for so long. Doesn't he have an inkling as to who I am? The shadowy figure was vague in the mist, appearing for a flash, then disappearing immediately thereafter. But in that brief flash, Moshi had struck. A barrage of blazing fireballs hurtled forward with a resounding boom. Ayo! A hum came from the thick mist. After another few moments, the voice sighed. Shihajun, the ruthless god of war, truly lives up to his name. He let out an eerie, ominous laugh. You really do have a terrible temper. A muscle in Moshi's jaw jumped. Where's Gumong? What is your relationship with him? I don't have any relationship with him. As for who I am, aren't all those tales being spread in Chonghua City? The person spoke with relish, as if describing something he found incomparably interesting. They say I rape brothel girls, or that I'm a runaway cook from Luomei Pavilion. He laughed loudly, the sound reverberating in mist that grew thicker and thicker. They're really so fascinating. I heard a great many, and I even told one myself. He told one himself? That's right. The man continued with an indolent lilt, as if he could see Moshi's slightly widened eyes. I was bored of lazing around, so I dressed up as a storyteller and slipped into a tea house to tell tales. I said I'd mounted 70 victims in one night, but that friend of yours, young Yue Gongzi, didn't enjoy my performance at all. He wanted to gossip about a 2-pump chump. What a naughty child. So you were actually then the real storyteller. I killed him, of course, the man said carelessly. I think I threw him into a dry well afterward, or maybe a burial mound. Sorry, I've killed so many people. It's a bit of a blur. He laughed again. Speaking of, you're certainly more reliable than that Wang Shujun. All he knows is how to let his imagination run wild. Once he came up with his own conclusion, he tripped over himself, rushing to pry proof of it from the prisoner's mouth. You know better. You properly analyzed those few sword marks I left on the bodies. The man paused, then asked, nigh delighted, So, did you figure it out? Are you really Li Qingqian? Moshi's voice was low and fiery. The man was still for a few moments, the thick fog roiling, before he unexpectedly burst into giggles. His laughter grew louder and eerier, resounding endlessly around them, its source impossible to pin down. Li Qingqian, ha 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 ha. This name seemed to have pricked a sore spot in his heart. The laughter wrenched from his throat like wheeling vultures, circling without cease. I'm not. His voice suddenly tightened, sharp amid the lingering echoes. The first chapter of the water-parting sword manual says, the benevolent blade parts water, the righteous blade cuts sorrow, compassion despite lowliness, resilience against 1,000 hardships. How ridiculous, how wretched, how pathetic. Li Zongshi Hu. He's nothing more than a penniless miser, a useless good-for-nothing, a pathetic pedant. He continued to curse and rage for a long while until he gradually calmed down. In the freezing, silent mist, he snapped, I'm so sick of you hypocrites. You are unquestionably tainted by all 3 poisons, greed, wrath, and ignorance, but you remain trapped by cowardly indecision, all for the sake of your precious reputation. Danger had filled his voice. Moshi could not have been more sensitive to killing intent, and his eyes were instantly wary. Shuairan, come. A beam of red light flashed, and the holy snake whip hissed into his hand. Oh, Shuairan, the man snorted, so strong. Its power is earth-shattering. Unfortunately, I think you won't need it here. Moshi said nothing. I can't defeat you in a fight, so I won't bother trying. However, I've had the luck to overhear some of your secrets. I've no shortage of ways to trap you. For example, The man paused, then asked in a tone filled with curiosity. Back when Gumong was locked up at Lome Pavilion, did you or did you not tell him that the lotus tattoo on his neck was your doing? Moshi's blood ran cold. He ground his teeth. What exactly are you? Don't be in such a rush to ask that. Why don't I ask you first? The voice still spoke with interest. Let me ask you a question. The finest general of Chonghua, the pristine Shihajun, distant from all others, self-restrained and self-possessed for 30 years. A man so callous, even Princess Mengzu's attentive care can't thaw him. The man's voice rose and fell, moving suddenly close and suddenly far. This time, it seemed to press right up next to Moshi's ear, breath humid. You and that General Gu, what relationship do you share? With a whistle, Shuiran struck, fiery rage making sparks burst from the whip. The phantom seemed to have expected this. He wasn't hit and dispersed to who knew where. You're so mean, officer. Looks like my guess wasn't far off the mark. Moshi didn't answer. Hand over Gumong, he snapped. Hand him over. I'm not stupid. He used to be the fiercest general of the Liao Kingdom. Even though his core's been broken, I still have methods by which to control him and revive his battle strength. That phantom was smiling. Why would I hand over such a strong soldier? He paused, and his smile grew broader. In all of Chonghua, you're the only person who can face him one-on-one, Shihajun. As long as I have him to guard me, no one else who comes here would hope to be a match for him. As for you, Shihajun, the suggestive lilt in that voice grew more pronounced. I have other plans. As the man spoke, the lingering sound drifted into the distance, as if it were about to fade away entirely. Since you had the courage to come alone and enter this dreamscape for his sake, I must, of course, be a good host and let him serve you properly. He laughed softly. Shihajun, pleasant times with your lover are ever brief, so enjoy them while you can. You! As if in answer to his wishes, a burst of red lit up in front of him, accompanied by a high, wavering voice. Someone was singing. Rain falls soft over Yuchi Pavilion. Sun shines down on Jinni Hall. Let wine and music flow for all. Mean although their lives may seem, matters of ants are not so small. Moshi knew that as soon as one entered the Dream of Longing's vision, it could not be broken from within. He would have to wait for the Emperor's reinforcements to arrive. Until then, he would be unable to avoid whatever illusory scenes unfolded before him. However, so long as he could maintain clarity of mind, it would be no trial to withstand. But at that very moment, the phantom's voice slithered once more from the depths of the dreamscape. Shihajun, I know what you're thinking. You mean to endure by means of sheer willpower, don't you? He snickered. Too bad. Even if you can endure, Gumong might not manage. Moshi tensed. What do you mean? Everyone says Shihajun possesses astonishing self-restraint, that his focus never wavers. Naturally, I wouldn't be so stupid as to rely on brute force. But now that Gumong's lost his souls, he's nothing more than a pitiful, mentally fragile creature. Of course, it's easier for me to make use of him. His words were faint, slow. When that ring of yours pointed the way for you, did it tell you that he'd been drugged? Cold shot through Moshi's blood. He snarled. I'm what? I'm despicable? The phantom smiled. I only gave him some medicine to awaken his strength, so he could better guard me. Good gentleman Shihajun, what were you thinking? The phantom's voice was once more filled with delight. But you're not off the mark. I truly am shameless, because the next drug I give him will be something else. Moshi said nothing. You're not the only one I've tossed into this illusion. He's here too. The phantom's voice was unctuous. You can endure with your noble self-control. But can you bear to see him? Heh, that's enough. Moshi was so furious he wanted to let out a stream of curses. Who was this rapist in truth? Li Qingqian, the Liao Kingdom cook, or some deranged, vengeful ghost? My bet's on the brother somehow learning the sword method from the manual. But, you know, I mean, maybe it's actually possible. Humans are no more than desires given flesh. Some people indulge in sensual delights, others pursue the heights of reputation. But are the desires of passion and the desires of reputation both desire? The phantom laughed softly. What difference is there? Moshi made no reply. Go on. Your Gumong Guga awaits. The phantom's voice disappeared, while the sounds of music grew louder and louder. The opera singer's trilling voice was about to reach the clouds, winding like a venomous snake. In that shade will a kingdom rise, a lifetime's work etched in his eyes. Qi Xuan's teachings only partly gleaned. When will the east wind wake me from this dream? With that final syllable, the fog surrounding Moshi dispersed. He discovered that he was standing amid an expanse of brilliant lanterns. It was evening, and people came and went, passing back and forth like a weaving shuttle through the dazzling, nightless dark. 2 guards stood before the extravagant, whitewashed, black-tiled doors in front of him, wearing blue spellcasters' robes with storm patterns and golden trim. 8 brilliant lanterns illuminated the path into the manor, the blue bat totem above the doorway glimmering brightly with spiritual energy. The insignia of Murong Lian's clan. Why was he at Wangshu Manor? The illusory world created by Dream of Longing was usually linked to memories with which one didn't wish to part. Gumong was also in the dreamscape with Moshi. It was probable that the scene was born not of Moshi's inner demons, but rather those of the other man in the dream, the one who'd been fed hallucinatory drugs, Gumong. Even though Gumong's memories weren't whole, the illusion could draw from any fixation in his heart. But why would they manifest Wangshu Manor? Wangshu Manor. Drugs. Desire. Past. These words floated through Moshi's mind. When he thought about it again, he remembered something, and his elegant face instantly paled. Was it possible that the dreamscape had absorbed that particular part of Gumong's past? Moshi cursed inwardly. His shadow swept over the arcing eaves toward a certain corner of Wangshu Manor. That was the end of the chapter. And the next chapter, chapter 28, is called Tryst Location. Did they have a secret tryst in Wangshu Jun's manor? Or something? I guess we're gonna find out. Henry, this is fun. I get to find out how much of Arha is Arha weirdness and how much is just Meat Bun style. And apparently it's all just Meat Bun. I agree. I think it is just Meat Bun. Yeah. Okay. tryst location. This was indeed the right direction. The silver needle gleamed brighter with every step Moshi took. Moshi stopped before a servant's cramped quarters and slowed his quickened breath. He lifted pale and slender fingers and found that the ring's needle had reverted once again to the soaring snake pattern. Gumong was inside. If Gumong was drugged, then the strongest urge in his heart right now would inevitably be lust, and this room, Moshi swallowed. This room was where he and Gumong had shared most of their trysts. In Murong Lian's house? In those days, Murong Lian had been shamelessly despicable. Isn't he? Anyway, after their first great battle, he claimed credit for all of Gumong's battlefield achievements, and the emperor had lavished rewards upon him, while Gumong remained a nameless little slave in Wangshu Manor. Given the sprawling vastness of the noble estates, Moshi and Gumong hadn't been able to meet once since returning from the battlefield. Moshi held back and endured quietly as 1 month passed, then 2. Until finally he could endure no longer. It seemed that Gumong couldn't come visit him, so Mo Gongzi donned a grim expression and deigned to pay Wangshu Manor a visit. At first, he intended to use the excuse of discussing military matters with Murong Lian to catch a glimpse of Gumong. However, the housekeeper said that Murong Lian was cultivating in seclusion at the practice field. He wouldn't emerge for a while yet. If Mo Gongzi doesn't mind, why not take a stroll in the back gardens? We can arrange for an attendant to come with you. Then please ask Gumong to come along, Moshi replied with complete poise. We're more or less acquaintances. The request was not an unreasonable one. Gumong happened to be free, so the housekeeper sent for him. When Gumong entered the great hall and laid eyes on Moshi, he was struck somewhat dumb. Mo Gongzi and Murong Gongzi mixed as poorly as water with fire. Moshi gracing Wangshu Manor with his presence was more shocking than a visit from his elderliness, the emperor himself. Shaoju won't come out for another 2 hours yet. You must accompany Mo Gongzi on a stroll through the manor grounds, the housekeeper instructed Gumong. A pause. Of course, he replied. Moshi glanced at him, then lightly looked away. Wangshu Manor consisted of 7 compounds. The first 5 bustled with activity, while the last 2 were reserved for gardening and the cultivation of spiritual herbs. Rarely did any servants go back there. Gumong followed Moshi as they walked from the front courtyard to the back. Along the way, he played tour guide for Wangshu Manor's scenery and described the layout of the grounds. They acted overly distant and courteous with each other, to the point that no guards or servants who passed noticed anything unusual about their conduct. Only Moshi knew his own impatience. He wanted very much to talk to Gumong alone. He wanted to look into his eyes and devour this man, who still belonged to Murong Lian, with his bare hands, without leaving a drop of blood or scrap of bone. But he had to hold on. To the left is the Qin room, where the young master plays in his leisure hours. There's a 5-stringed Jiaowei Qin, made from the wood of a foxglove tree, left by the old master. As they walked ever farther into the gardens, and the passers-by grew ever rarer, Moshi's heart began burning hotter, as if even his blood had been set aflame. When they stepped into a medicine garden, they were finally entirely alone. There are 765 types of medicinal herbs in the garden, Gumong said, including. What they included would remain a mystery, because the young Master Mo in front of Gumong suddenly stopped in his tracks. Gumong didn't notice and kept walking, bumping straight into his broad back. Moshi turned to gaze wordlessly at him. "What's up?" Gumong asked hesitantly. "Don't you—" Moshi's expression was wooden. Clearly he craved and adored Gumong beyond measure, but when Moshi stood before Gumong in his nonchalant gaze, he found himself woefully unsure. Unable to take the hit to his pride, he stiffly finished. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Gumong muttered something to himself, then rubbed his nose and smiled. "Long time no see, Gongzi?" Moshi said nothing. "Hey, don't glare at me. You know I'm pretty busy. I have to wipe tables, chop firewood, and catch garden pests. All of these things are super important." The expression on Moshi's face worsened. He looked as if he'd been poisoned by his own rage. But at the time, Gumong hadn't confirmed they were in any kind of real relationship. In the field, Gumong had shamelessly said that this kind of thing was normal. As young men, they shouldn't take sleeping together too seriously. Now this young man's heart was about to give out thanks to this old scoundrel. And somehow, that scoundrel was still rambling here and chattering there about his important responsibilities at Wangshu Manor, as if his lordship, the young master of the Mo clan, was less significant than one of Murong Gongzi's damn tables. It made Moshi want to hurl a fireball into Murong Lian's desk. Then they'd see what Gumong could wipe. Gumong went on and on about Murong Gongzi's high standards for his desk, how you had to be able to see your reflection in the sandalwood surface. Halfway through his next sentence, the world spun, and by the time he came back to his senses, Moshi had pinned him to the wall. "You," Gumong began. "You what?" Gumong didn't get to finish. Moshi kept him trapped with his body, that cool, elegant face tilting closer as one of his hands curled around Gumong's waist, and the other lifted to press against the wall by his face. Moshi dipped his head and firmly sealed Gumong's rambling mouth with his own. Moshi kissed Gumong forcefully, as if he wanted to bring all his desire crashing down upon the man in his arms, as if he wanted to devour and possess Gumong from head to toe. His every movement betrayed an unnerving thirst for domination and control. His breaths were uncommonly ragged, his tongue unspeakably passionate, as though the aloof Mogongzi from a moment ago had been a different person altogether. "You're crazy. This is Wangshu Manor." Amid their entwining kisses, Gumong came back to his senses. He tore himself violently out of Moshi's hold as his wet lips opened and closed. "Someone will see." Gumong pulled with too much strength, and Moshi made no attempt to defend himself. With a muffled sound, his arm was dislocated. Holy shit. Gumong hadn't expected that Moshi wouldn't resist, nor that he would emerge the dubious victor in this scuffle. He was instantly mortified, and he swallowed hard. All right, you're crazy. I admit defeat. I was in the wrong, all right? I'll help you pop that joint back in." Ow. Gumong reached out, wanting to help Moshi realign his shoulder, but the young master ducked away and refused his touch. He only continued to stare at him fiercely. "Daga," Gumong wheedled. "I'm begging you, let me pop it back into place, okay? Otherwise, when Xiaoju comes out and sees that his guest's been injured, and he asks me how it happened, what am I supposed to say?" Gumong stuck to his act. This rascal, who was invincible amid the smoke of war, was even more incandescently infuriating off the battlefield. It's not like I can say I did it, can I? Moshi made no sound. His face was still icy, aloof, but upon closer inspection, though he was as yet still in control, a dangerous emotion was surging in the depths of his eyes. After maintaining his rigidity for a long moment, he abruptly, stiffly asked once more, Don't you have anything to say to me? I do, actually. Speak. Have you been cursed to repeat yourself? Gumong hastily smiled at Moshi's answering expression. Hey, I'm sorry, I swear. Don't touch me, I can do it myself, Moshi said angrily. You can't. You suck at healing magic and healing techniques. Moshi's expression darkened further. But Gumong stopped him, grinning, his smile filled with the smug delight of getting away with a prank. Then he darted close and kissed Moshi's cheek. Moshi didn't move. How come my princess isn't reacting? Gumong murmured, stroking Moshi's chin. Another kiss then. Only after he'd paid for his mischief with many more kisses did Mo Gongzi finally, and very unwillingly, let Gumong realign the joint. It plainly didn't hurt very much when it popped back into place, but the glare Moshi leveled at him was teary and a touch red. Huh, you... Gumong wanted to take a closer look, but Mo Gongzi's palm landed square on that face that was as thick as a city wall, pushing him back. Moshi tore his gaze away, refusing to let him see. After a stretch of silence, Moshi said, his face still turned, I haven't seen you in 2 months. No, still 12 days to go. Moshi's head snapped around, shooting Gumong another fierce glare. Arms crossed, Gumong leaned leisurely against that whitewashed wall. He looked at Moshi with a smile, chin slightly raised. At length, the young master spoke, expression flat. Take us somewhere no one will see. In truth, after they'd been apart for so long, Moshi wasn't the only one unable to hold back. It was just that Moshi disguised his need with cool arrogance, while Gumong used breezy nonchalance. But once they were holding and grinding against each other, both youths burned with torment. In the end, Gumong led Moshi to an unassuming little room. As hints went, this was way too obvious, and almost as soon as they entered, Gumong was shoved hard against the wall. The dark, windowless little room was soon filled with their low panting and the sound of soft kisses. Just as Moshi was biting and sucking on the side of his neck, Gumong opened his eyes. Even as the tide of desire rose, he still remembered to gasp, Don't kiss so high. Xiaozu will notice. Mentioning Murong Lian at this moment was clearly not a wise decision. Moshi stilled, as if powerfully restraining some terrifying impulse. Gumong panted beneath him, and after these few beats of stillness, he was roughly turned around, his belt pulled free. Moshi seemed to be wrestling with some colossal grievance as he pressed Gumong against the wall to furtively kiss his cheek, his nape, and eventually that slave collar with which Murong Lian had bound him. That ice-cold black hoop seemed to stab into Moshi, reminding him that no matter how he yearned, to the point of pain, to the point that his heart was about to tear itself apart, the person in his arms still belonged to Murong Lian. Murong Lian could summon Gumong whenever he wanted, torture him however he pleased. It was for him to say whether Gumong lived or died, whether he received praise or shame, one iron collar digging into his spirit, and the lifetime of control it entailed. Moshi was holding someone who belonged to Murong Lian. Jealousy burned the rims of Moshi's eyes. He wrenched Gumong's face closer, and his control eroded, compelling Gumong to twist around and take his kiss while still pressed against the door. Darkness made the wildfire in Moshi's heart blaze so searingly. How could their mouths entwine so passionately, so wetly? Moshi made short work of Gumong's clothes, but his own weren't yet in disarray. Likely because he could feel the condition of the person behind him, Gumong said with petulant amusement, You're so prim and proper every time you fuck me, but in reality... The rest of the sentence turned into a muted groan. Xiaoju will be out in 2 hours. You need to be quick. Mo Shi pulled out his wet fingers and took hold of Gumong's hips. His hot, thick cock rubbed between Gumong's legs before suddenly thrusting in. Ah, Gumong cried out, instantly going limp. He barely managed to stay on his feet by gripping the door. He could vividly feel the heat and girth of Moshi's cock throbbing within him, as if it were about to burn him from the inside out. Panting in low rasps, Moshi grabbed Gumong's hips and began to fuck him, standing there against the door. Even though Gumong lived in a remote courtyard, there was no guarantee that no one would pass by. The door was thin, so Gumong had to tightly bite his lips, not daring to make a sound. Moshi thrust into him in this way for some time before he turned Gumong's face to capture his wet lips. Only when Gumong opened his mouth did his gasps leak out. Those sounds seemed to provoke Moshi further, and the movements from behind him grew more urgent, pounding audibly against his ass. Every one of Moshi's thrusts seemed to reach the deepest part of Gumong, as if he were fervently trying to press his entirety into him. Amid this brutal pounding, Gumong couldn't stop himself from panting out loud. He struggled, trying to stop Moshi, doing his best to turn around, to say something to him. Yet Moshi only allowed Gumong the slightest space to turn before he pressed him down again without giving him the chance to speak. He lifted Gumong's legs from the front, and, as if unwilling to wait a moment longer, rubbed his burning cockhead against his still gaping hole before driving aggressively back in. Ah, too deep, it's too deep, Moshi. Ah. With his legs held up like this, Gumong was viciously yet silently fucked by this young man who usually looked devoid of all desire. His earlier coarse breathing and muted groans soon gave way to incoherency as he felt that his stomach was about to be pierced through. Even Gumong's toes, hanging suspended in the air, had curled against his will. Moshi didn't like to speak much during sex, but that primitive, fiery, feral instinct, and that deep gaze, that seemed to want to devour Gumong whole, was more than enough to make one's heart quiver. Not to mention how ruthlessly and frantically he pounded into Gumong, each thrust driving into the deepest recesses of his body, urgent and wild. Perhaps the door's violent shaking finally brought Gumong to his senses. In the end, he managed to pant in a low voice, Not here. Go inside. There's a bed inside." Bed? More like a kennel. Gumong was the only person in the world who is capable of coaxing the overly fastidious young master Mo to lie on a battered and broken down little wooden bed. Why not here? Someone will... Gumong had never possessed a sense of shame, nor was he well read. Whenever he was distraught, he spoke with mortifying plainness. Arching his neck, he gasped violently. "Someone will hear you fucking me. Does that scare you? Bullshit. I still gotta live off Xiaoju's money. What are you doing? Not so fast. That's too fast. It'll be best if he kicks you out. You can live off me," Moshi bit out. Despite his words, he knew that if their tryst were to be discovered, getting kicked out would be the least of Gumong's worries. It was equally as possible that he'd be drawn and quartered. So he picked up Gumong, driving his cock so deep into him that he almost cried out loud, and carried him into the room. Moshi's arms were strong and sturdy, and Gumong was not weak. As the two of them walked, Gumong's legs tightly wrapped around Moshi's waist. His cock never slipped out, and it rubbed repeatedly against Gumong's inner walls. The movements were neither quick nor slow, but rather the height of torment. By the time Moshi dropped Gumong onto the bed, Gumong couldn't hold back anymore. When Moshi pressed him down with his vigorous, searing hot body, lifted his legs, and began to once again fiercely and rapidly fuck him, he panted through muffled moans. I'm gonna... I'm not gonna do, like, all the moaning. I can't... Shadi, fuck me there. Right there. Harder. This was Gumong's way, never bothering to hide anything. Or perhaps it was precisely because he wanted to hide something that he always acted shamelessly, saying things like, never mind, you're young. I respect the elderly and cherish the youth, so I'll let you top. But between us, guys, whatever goes as long as we both feel good. But Gumong's body couldn't bear this kind of stimulation. He had a naturally high tolerance for pain and was unaffected by injuries on the battlefield. But he couldn't bear the pleasure of being fucked. In the end, he always started to cry. But despite his tears, he still threw himself into entangling with Moshi. It was often like this when they made love. Moshi wasn't very talkative, but Gumong brazenly said things that drove him out of his mind. You're so big. You're fucking me too hard. Get deeper inside me. You're gonna break me. Why are you so hot? Why haven't you come yet? How much longer are you going to take? This provocation, annoyance, and teasing was too much for Moshi, but he couldn't do anything about it. Gumong was a shameless ruffian. He was given to spouting such nonsense. Gumong was also a lowly slave. So perhaps, when he slept with Mogongza, even if he did bottom, he had no hang-ups to overcome. He even allowed Moshi to... Moshi wasn't sure if he was mistaken, but Gumong seemed to like it when Moshi came inside him. Moshi had once asked him about this, his question full of hidden meaning. Gumong had smiled and confessed everything. Yes, it feels so good. Those moments feel amazing. Do you want to try? How about I do it next time? Moshi didn't let him finish, capturing that mouth in sore need of a lesson in a kiss. He buried his hips between Gumong's spread legs and pistoned back and forth swiftly and ferociously, reducing Gumong's banter to disjointed moans. Moshi was a prudent and decorous person, but unexpectedly, he loved hearing Gumong's almost incoherent and wanton noises. He just never admitted it out loud. In the end, after both of them had come, Gumong was practically limp with exhaustion as he lay beneath Moshi, soaked in sweat. His hole was still clenched around Moshi's cock, which plugged the cum inside him as Gumong's sturdy chest rose and fell. Who could have guessed that such a powerful, well-muscled male body was currently pumped full of another man's cum? Gumong stared into space, dazed for a while. As Moshi kissed him tenderly, he suddenly laughed. Why'd you come to see Xiaoju? Moshi was silent for several heartbeats. With rare humility, he mumbled, I missed you. Gumong laughed harder. What a righteous gentleman you are, he said to the youth on top of him. Why didn't you think of climbing over the wall to see me instead? Moshi stared at him blankly. The idea truly hadn't occurred to him. Upon careful consideration, it seemed like Gumong's suggestion was eminently sensible. How hadn't he thought of it before? As he pondered this, the slave collar around Gumong's neck lit up. Xiaoju is looking for me, Gumong said after a moment. It's time for you to go, too. I'm supposed to be taking a stroll with you, not sleeping with you. For a period of time after this tryst, until they again received orders to go to battle, Moshi often visited Gumong. Although Wangshu Manor was shielded by barrier spells, they posed no trouble for Moshi. In those times of impassioned rutting, occasionally, when Moshi had fucked Gumong out of his mind, Murong Lian would for some reason want a servant. As the slave collar tightened around his neck, Gumong would be almost breathless between two forms of torment, choking as he came and reducing the sheets to a sodden mess. Murong Lian had an irritable temperament and was unwilling to wait long after summoning someone. Often, Gumong didn't have time to clean himself and rushed over as soon as he was properly dressed. Sometimes, even as he knelt before Murong Gongzi, Mo Gongzi's cum would still be inside him. Those days had been thoroughly absurd. Thinking back to it now, even Moshi was stunned at his youthful recklessness. There had been no promises between them, no foreseeable future. But his heart had never cooled, as if he meant to be caught up in Gumong for a lifetime. They had nothing. They could only turn their love, control, and possessiveness into this intense and yearning entanglement. One was a pristine young master, held above all, while the other was a Wangshu Manor slave, low to the bones. It was the most shocking of scandals, but it was also the most heartwarming of young loves. Such were the golden days of their youth. Okay. We're back to the present now. I was not expecting that all today yet. I didn't think we were gonna quite go there yet. Someone said something about making sure your headphones are working. War Dove, please check your headphones are working. Yeah, I hope that you did that. I hope everybody's headphones were working. I'm okay, but that might have been... I don't know if that was in some ways almost more descriptive than some of the scenes in Arha that I've read so far, but it might have been, or I don't know, just that was a lot. Okay, we're back to the present in the dreamscape. Now, within the dreamscape, Gumong had been sent to this place once again. Dream of Longing had manifested the hidden desires in his heart. In that case, what would Moshi see when he opened the door? Gritting his teeth, Moshi stared at that door he had seen countless times before. At this juncture, he couldn't back out, but he also had no way of breaking through. Nowadays, he was too level-headed and powerful to ever again be that youth who had been unable to distinguish between the waking world and dreams. But that old Gu Shixiang, who had once himself been the one to pull them out of an illusion, had also long since changed. This time, Gumong was the one ensnared in Dream of Longing, while Moshi was powerless to act. The Phantom had correctly identified the nature of their relationship, thereby revealing Moshi's greatest vulnerability. Under these circumstances, if he reacted to Gumong, and Gumong's thoughts were stirred, then Dream of Longing would become more powerful and drag Gumong even deeper within it. But if Moshi didn't react at all, Gumong would, in all likelihood, still be tormented out of his mind. The Phantom had drugged him, and Moshi knew what that medicine would do if Gumong wasn't granted relief or antidote in time. So before the Emperor's reinforcements came, all he could do was his best. He would stall for time and try to keep Gumong lucid. Moshi thought this over briefly, then lifted a hand, pushing the door open. At almost the same moment, The person on the other side grabbed him and pushed him against the wall. In the darkness, helpless, impatient blue eyes met his. Before Moshi had a chance to say anything, his lips were caught against a trembling mouth. I did not... Sorry, guys. I didn't drink enough water during that part of the stream, I guess. Let me read that again. Before Moshi had a chance to say anything, his lips were caught against a trembling mouth. Okay, that one word got me, because that's the end of the chapter. And we're at the time... We're at closing time. Yeah, blue turnips, more descriptive compared to what you've read in Arha so far. Yeah, I think so, like, and I was like, I kept reading, and I was like, okay, it's coming to a close, and then it kept going. I would, like, turn a page, and I would be like, it's still going. So, that was fun, and we are at, a bit of a cliffhanger. And let me try to figure out how many pages are left. 90. Okay. When we return next Monday, 3 o'clock, we'll be on page 321 for chapter 29, which is called Inescapable Desire. And, no, I don't think we can finish the book in one stream. Wait, I don't know if we'll be able to finish it in one stream unless I go over time, but if we don't finish it next stream, then Wednesday's stream will be, like, really short unless we go right into the second book. There's a lot of pages of, glossary and stuff at the end, so I think there are, like, 60. Yeah, there's, like, 60 pages. So we'll finish next week, but I'm almost wondering if we should, like, go a bit over time and then finish it on Monday, and then we could start book 2 next Wednesday. But I'll just see what happens. I already have like the first 3 books, so we could go right into book 2 whenever we get there. So, well, that was fun today. And I will see y'all on Monday. And don't be like me. Remember to drink water. Stay hydrated. Alright. Peace out. Oh yeah, no, it's blue turnips. It's like 60. Oh yeah, 60 is a lot for a stream, but I don't know. I guess I usually do like 50. So that's why I'm thinking otherwise the next one will be really short. But, I mean, we'll just see what happens if I feel like doing all of it next stream. Oh, on the cover, there's lotus flowers on their clothes, too. Where... I'm trying to find... Oh, on their collars. Yeah. Yeah, they are. They have lotus flowers on the collars. I don't think this is gonna be visible. But if it is, I don't know. But pretend you can see there's lotus flowers on their collars. Yeah. Alright. I will see y'all next time.